Hello, friends! Stardew Valley is a farming simulator, but it's way more than just farming. Farming, foraging, fishing, mining, and combat are all skills that can be leveled up with experience. As you level up, you will be given options to specialize in professions, which will grant a variety of bonuses that can affect anything from how much money you make, how many bonus items you find, or even how fast your crops grow. But how good are each of these professions, and how do they stack up against each other? I'm going to give each one my ranking on the Stardew Valley profession tier list. If you find this interesting, please like and subscribe for more videos like this, and let me know if there are other topics like this you'd like to see as well. With that, let's get into it. Profession perks are kind of all over the place, so keep in mind that all of these rankings are subjective and it really depends on how you want to play the game in the end. The criteria are not quite as cut and dry as just ranking how much money they can make, but I'll try to make sure to include as many factors as possible and hopefully assign an overall value to each. Of course, things like profits, bonus resources, and quality of life changes will be accounted for, but things like relative value compared to alternatives will certainly play a role too. You may weight things a bit differently, but hopefully my rankings at least make sense in general. Either way, don't worry, if you make a mistake in your choices or you have regrets later, you can change professions at the Statue of Uncertainty in the sewers for 10,000 gold. Alright, let's get to the list. With 6 professions per skill, this is another long list, so I'll try to go quick, especially on the ones that just don't have much going for them. To keep things simple, we'll just go down the list by skill. First up, farming. Rancher. Rancher is one of the farming profession choices at level 5, and it boosts animal product values by 20%. It's a really solid choice if you're planning to lean into farm animals more than farming a lot of crops. This will affect all of your raw animal products like eggs and milk, but also the processed ones like mayonnaise, cheese, and even things like cloth made from wool. 20% is definitely not bad, and in a vacuum, this sounds like a really good choice. Unfortunately, going this route will limit you a bit. Animal products are pretty specific, so if you aren't going all out with farm animals, you'll be leaving money on the table that you could be getting from some of the alternatives. I definitely wouldn't judge anyone for taking this, and there are reasons I've gone this route in the past that I'll get into with one of the other professions later. Still, from an overall value perspective, I have to give this a B. Coop Master. After Rancher, you get the option of Coop Master or Shepherd at level 10. Coop Master lets you befriend coop animals faster and cuts incubation times for eggs in half, which also includes ostrich and slime eggs, even though they aren't coop animals. Incubation speed is really not all that impressive to me. Sure, you can make some money by selling animals and then raising new ones in their place, right? Well, maybe not. Let's check the math. Let's say in your best case scenario, you time your incubation of a chicken so it hatches the morning after you sell a maxed out chicken for 1,040 gold. In the best case, it will cost you 1 egg to incubate and then 3 more eggs that you miss out on while waiting for the new chicken to mature. Those eggs turned into mayo at 228 gold each, with the Rancher profession bonus would have made you 912 gold. That's only a gain of 128 gold over the course of 3 days. The problem is, the chicken you sold for 1,040 gold was likely producing large eggs, which make gold quality mayonnaise. This means that incubating and selling chickens actually results in a loss. Ouch. So, Coop Master really only helps to fill up your coop a little bit faster. On the bright side, there's also a hidden perk that increases the product quality of your animal produce. For animals with maximum mood and friendship, this will correspond to an increase in quality according to this table. This isn't a huge difference when it comes to overall average price change at roughly 6.5%, but it might actually still be better than the incubation time bonus. Unfortunately, quality gains won't carry through when processing milk and non-ostrich eggs into cheese and mayonnaise, so it really only benefits animal products that you sell raw, or something like wool, which increases average output quantity when processed into cloth. Truffles from pigs will also be unaffected. This bonus is largely wasted on most coop animals, with rabbits and ducks being the main exceptions. If you wanted to fill up a bunch of coops with golden chickens, I could see switching to Coop Master temporarily making sense, but otherwise, the math on this one just doesn't look good. I hate to say it, but I'm giving Coop Master a D. Shepherd. Like Coop Master with coop animals, the shepherd profession lets you befriend barn animals faster and increases the rate of wool production from sheep. While I like sheep just fine, the focus on them exclusively with this profession is a bit disappointing. There are a lot of other barn animals that won't see any benefit from this, and sheep are not even the highest profit barn animal to begin with. You do still get the same hidden quality bonus to animal products as Coop Master, which actually synergizes with wool from sheep in this case. For sheep with maximum friendship and mood, the shepherd profession will allow them to produce quality wool daily, which averages out to about 1.84 cloth per sheep once it's through the loom. That's over 1,000 gold per sheep per day on average, which is actually a significant increase. They still get beat out by pigs, but they work in the winter and you don't have to go looking for truffles every day, so maybe they are worth it for the consistency and simplicity. If you're raising sheep, this looks like a much better choice than Coop Master, with just a few exceptions. I'll give Shepherd a C. Tiller. In Stardew Valley, you're a farmer, so you're probably going to want to sell crops, right? Well, with the tiller profession, all crops, including vegetables, flowers, and fruits that were not foraged, will get a flat 10% increase in value. There's not much to this one. Early in the game, you're probably selling a lot of crops to make money, so this will be helpful for your pocketbook in the first season or two. With the scalability of crops versus animals, it will probably beat out Rancher too. However, after you start processing your crops with artisan equipment like preserves jars, kegs, dehydrators, or casks, you probably won't get as much value out of it. Early game, it competes in the B tier, but over the long term, I'm going to give it a C. Artisan. The artisan profession increases the value of all artisan goods by 40%. Compared to what we've seen so far, this sounds like a really big boost to profits, and it definitely is. It gets even better though. Artisan goods are already some of the most valuable produce on the farm, but it's the range of products that fit into this category that really make this profession great. This comes after tiller, so you'd expect it to increase the value of artisan products from crops like preserves, wine, and dried fruit, but this extends to animal products like cheese, mayonnaise, and cloth, honey from bee houses, foraging products like dried mushrooms or fruits, and even smoked fish, which still retain other fishing bonuses. It's just so versatile that it's still probably one of the best professions in the game, even if you didn't grow a single crop, and that's saying something, considering it's technically in the line of professions for crops. If the bonus to artisan goods was 20%, I could still easily put this in the A tier. At 40%, it blows the ceiling off the S tier. Just one note on this one. In all honesty, I pretty much always take the artisan profession, but it's so good that it actually changes how I play the game. In my last playthrough, I purposefully avoided this profession, going rancher for a more animal-centric farm, as well as limiting the number of kegs and preserves jars I could craft to just one each, and I actually had more fun experimenting with the other aspects of the game that would otherwise be obsolete. If you're going for your golden clock, I totally get it, but just keep in mind that money doesn't buy happiness. Well, at least not all the time. Agriculturalist. Agriculturalist increases growth rates for all crops by 10%. This doesn't include fruit trees, and it doesn't include regrowth of multi-harvest crops, so basically it's like having built-in speed grow for everything without using up a fertilizer slot. If you stack it with the actual speed grow, this can get crops growing really fast, getting a 43% increase in growth speed with hyper speed grow. This could be handy if you're trying to get crops grown really fast for a quest or just for selling outright. You can even get a starfruit harvest every 7 days with that stack, which is pretty impressive. If you're going all out with unprocessed crop sales, this and tiller work pretty well together, and you could probably argue for a B rating for them both. Unfortunately, when you stack this up with artisan as your alternative, it really starts to look bad by comparison. I have to give this a C. Okay, that's it for farming. Next up, mining. I think mining has some of the closest matchups, and there are some profession choices where the answer is really not obvious. Let's go through them all and see if you agree. Miner. At level 5 mining, your first profession option will be, shockingly, miner, which gives +1 ore per vein. Since a vein typically produces 1 to 3 ores per vein, this is a pretty significant increase, and over the course of your mining career, this can really add up. I don't think I've ever really struggled getting enough copper, iron, or gold ore. If you ever run out, it's pretty easy to find any of them in the mine just by picking the right range of floors. You can always buy more at the blacksmith too, although at quite a premium. With all that said, I rarely sell ore, so I'm not generally swimming in them at any point either. The more you get from each vein, the less time you have to spend mining. I think this is actually most important in the mid-game when you first start finding iridium ore. These can be hard to come by until you get really deep in Skull Cavern, and you're going to want a lot for tool upgrades, crafting, fixing up Willie's boat, or even building a slime hutch. I think it's hard to feel the effects of this profession just because you don't necessarily see the difference between normal ores and bonus ores when you're mining. This is definitely a solid profession, and I'll give it a B. Blacksmith. From miner, we can progress into blacksmith, which increases the value of metal bars by 50%. A 50% boost is pretty impressive, but I still have a hard time justifying this. Metal bars are so useful in crafting, I have a really hard time selling them. I would almost always rather have a supply of important raw materials than some extra cash. There's not much worse than going to craft something and finding out you actually have to go to the mine, or even worse, the blacksmith to refill your metal stock, not to mention go through the trouble of smelting bars. If you are really dedicated to mining, I could see this making sense, but otherwise, you probably aren't swimming in enough metal ore to make this worth it. This one depends a lot on your playstyle, so I could see this getting a higher rank, but for me, it's a hard pass in Tier D. Prospector. The other option from miner at level 10 is to go prospector, which doubles the chance to find coal. It's hard to quantify some of these because it really depends on how much you're mining, how much coal you need, and what you're using it on. Coal is often a limited resource for me. It's used to make metal bars, smoke fish, and craft a variety of equipment. Depending on what you're doing, you can go through a lot, and if you run out, your options are more mining, making it in kilns, and buying from the blacksmith for 150 to 250 gold each, depending on the year. If you aren't finding enough coal to support your needs, doubling what you find with Prospector can be pretty valuable if you're assuming each coal you find is saving you 250 gold. If I've gone the miner route, I'm probably happy to get more coal, and the fact that I don't generally try to sell many metal bars unless I need to makes me lean into Prospector more than Blacksmith. Still, it's just coal. It's not going to change your life. I'll give it a B. Geologist. At level 5, the alternative to miner is Geologist, which gives you a 50% chance to double the amount of gems you find from mining nodes. This one, you will notice, and it always feels good to see when you get multiple gems from a node. This can even double up later with Mining Mastery, which means that getting 4 gems from a node is not an uncommon occurrence. Nice, right? The truth is though, I rarely struggle to get enough gems. The only gemstones that don't end up going in the shipping bin regularly are jade and prismatic shards if I'm lucky enough to get them at all. Overall, I've never felt disappointed by this profession, but it usually doesn't blow me away with big numbers either. I'll give it a B. Excavator. The excavator profession doubles your chance of finding geodes. Breaking geodes often feels like an inconvenience to me every time I have to go visit Clint with a big stack of them. Given their raw value, both in terms of average gold per geode, but also their value in filling out the museum, it's hard to argue against going excavator too much. With the 1.6 update, geode crushers don't require coal to operate anymore, so you can completely take Clint out of the equation as well. If you haven't finished the museum yet, I would definitely consider excavator. Whether you're cracking geodes for minerals or trading Omni geodes in for artifact troves at the Desert Trader, this profession can make a big difference in filling out the museum collection and collecting all of the rewards. The extra chance for iridium or prismatic shards doesn't hurt either. Where this one ranks probably depends where you're at in your playthrough. If you're done with the museum, I'd probably switch to something else, but before then, it's definitely worth it and I'd give it a B. Gemologist. Gemologist is the second option for level 10 mining after Geologist. It gives you a flat 30% increase to gem and mineral values. It's a nice boost for gems that you might find in your normal mining excursions, and it will scale even more with Mining Mastery later in the game. This can really start to take off if you get into gem duplication in crystallariums. Crystallariums are one of those things that, beyond the initial investment, take no inputs and are zero maintenance other than picking up your gems every so often. Once you load them up, you're just printing money, and with Gemologist, you're printing 30% more money. You could argue for taking this right away, but some might say it's a good idea to wait and switch to it after you've gotten what you need out of Excavator. Either way, I think eventually this is probably the way to go. The scalability and low maintenance of crystallariums later in the game just makes this such a good option for making extra money, and I think this one just makes the cut for the A tier. Alright, next up is Foraging. Forester. The forester profession increases wood drops from trees, stumps, and logs by 25%. Not too shabby, but I'm not super impressed either. I generally don't sell wood or hardwood, so that extra 25% is probably going to be used for crafting or building. Depending on what you've got planned, you may need a lot, or you may have a big surplus. This is one of those professions that may not really be necessary with a little foresight and planning, whether it's daily trips to the secret forest to gradually stock up on hardwood or regularly growing and cutting down a tree farm. Once you get the hang of resource management, it's not too hard to keep up on your wood needs, so this profession doesn't feel super meaningful in the long run. It's not useless either though. I'll give it a C. Lumberjack. Okay, it's another one about wood. If you needed forester, maybe you're really churning through wood for something and the extra hardwood will be helpful. I think saving up hardwood is usually even less of an issue for me than regular wood. There aren't a ton of things that even require hardwood, and the ones that do are probably not going to be produced in great numbers. Mushroom logs may be the biggest offender, and even then, moss will probably be more of a limiter when you consider the 12 hardwood you can get from the secret woods every day. A mahogany tree farm and some tree fertilizer can be an easy solution that really diminishes the need for lumberjack. I think this is even less exciting than forester, so I'll put it all the way down in D. Tapper. With the tapper profession, your tree syrups will be worth 25% more. This is your maple syrup, oak resin, pine tar, and eventually mystic syrup. With a standard tapper, you can expect right around 20 gold per day from each tapped maple, oak, or pine tree. With the tapper profession, that's only about 5 gold per day more per tree. Once you pick up Foraging Mastery, you'll get the recipe for mystic trees. Mystic syrup sells for 1,000 gold and can be harvested every 7 days. Having tapper will get you an additional 35 gold per day from mystic trees, assuming you're not using the syrup for something else. On top of that, getting the heavy tapper lets you harvest every 3 days, so it peaks out at about 83 extra gold per day per mystic tree. That's starting to sound better, but by the time you've got mystic trees tapped with heavy tappers, you're really in the late stages of the game. On top of that, scaling up your supplies of mystic tree seeds can take quite a while unless you've been diligently saving up other tree seeds since your first day on the farm. This takes a lot of work and time to make it worth your while. I have to put this one in the D tier as well. Gatherer. The gatherer profession gives you a 20% chance for doubling your harvest of foraged items. There are tons of useful foraged items, whether they are used as gifts, for quests, crafting, or just to sell. An average 20% increase to quantity seems like it could be really handy. This also applies to some things that you might not consider foraging. For example, minerals that spawn in the mine are not technically foraged items, but can still be duplicated. This also affects truffles, the most valuable animal product. On top of that, the duplicated items count as extra foraging experience, so you get to level up even faster. This is a great choice at any stage of the game. This is another one that I think just makes the cut for the A tier. Botanist. If you've taken Gatherer at level 5, your first option at level 10 will be Botanist, which improves all foraged items to their maximum quality. This means pretty much everything you pick up is going to have an iridium star. Not only is everything guaranteed to be double the base value, but you also suddenly get access to a supply of some of the best gifts available. Even for those villagers who don't traditionally like foraged items, this also counts the fruits from your fruit bat cave, a number of which are universally liked. This synergizes with Gatherer too, so expect to see double iridium harvests somewhat regularly. In my opinion, this easily beats out all of the other foraging professions. You could almost argue to put this in the S tier, but it's just hard to put it on the same level as Artisan. I would say this is probably at the top of the A tier though. Tracker. The alternative to Botanist at level 10 is the Tracker profession. This will show you the location of spawned forage in the current area by pointing to them off-screen with small yellow arrows. This also applies to artifact spots, which can sometimes be easier to miss than foraged items. Small green arrows will direct you to panning locations too. This could be helpful, but it really depends on how many foraged items you would have missed without it. Someone who is observant and knows generally where forage, artifact nodes, and shimmer lights for panning may show up might get almost nothing from this profession. You could end up saving some time exploring if you can rule out certain parts of maps, but that has never been enough to justify this profession for me. You can always try it out and see just how much you would have missed without it, but it's hard to compare it to botanist. I'll put this in the D tier. Next, let's move on to fishing. Fisher. Do you like selling fish? How about for 25% more? Well, that's what Fisher does. It's a super simple scaler of fish value, and it even applies to smoked fish, which get additional multipliers from quality and the artisan profession. It's good in early game, and it isn't supplanted by any other profession later on. As you'll see, compared to the alternative at level 5, it looks even better. You can't go wrong with this one unless you just refuse to do any fishing. I'll give this a B. Angler. Do you like the 25% bonus from the fisher profession? Well, how about we just do that one again? The only difference here is that the alternative to angler is much more competitive, so picking this one up isn't so cut and dry. There isn't much else to say though, so like fisher, I'll give angler another B. Pirate. The pirate profession doubles your chance of finding treasure. This means the base chance of 15% gets bumped up to 30%. From there, you can get another 15% from magnet bait, another 5% for each treasure hunter tackle, along with increases from other buffs and luck. Once fishing mastery is unlocked, you can get golden treasure chests as well. You're living off RNG at this point, but you can really boost your chances of getting some random good items. I sometimes have a hard time deciding between this and angler. It really depends on how much fishing you do, whether you're going for difficult or expensive fish, or whether you have a bunch of fish ponds that you're regularly harvesting. It's really hard to quantify otherwise though. I've actually been saved from losing some difficult fish with the treasure hunter tackle, so I kind of like to go this route when fish aren't a primary moneymaker for me. The fact that it can compete with angler and it's not always an obvious pick one way or the other means I'll be putting this in the B tier as well. Trapper. Have you ever been crafting crab pots and thought to yourself, wow, I wish this was easier to make? No? Well, too bad, because that's what Trapper will do. Instead of costing 40 wood and 3 iron bars, the crafting cost will be reduced to 25 wood and 2 copper bars. Strictly speaking, this does lower the crafting cost if you're buying your ingredients from the blacksmith shop, but wood usually isn't really a problem, and copper and iron bars have different uses. So if you're just using what you dig up in the mine, it may be a blessing or a curse, depending on what else you need to craft. If I'm making a bunch of tappers, for example, I may not be thrilled about having my copper bar stash getting eaten up by something else. The fact that you can just buy crab pots directly from the fishing shop for 1,500 gold kind of reduces the value of this profession right away. How much do you really like crab pots? You're going to need to make a lot to make this worthwhile. Crab pots can be a good, slow, and steady source of gold and fishing experience, but it's hard not to get sick of collecting and reloading them every day, especially if you have enough to warrant the trapper profession. For me, it's just hard to justify. I give this a D. Mariner. Crab pots have a certain chance to produce junk depending on the type of bait you use. With the mariner profession, crab pots will no longer produce junk items. That's great, right? Well, not exactly. Junk can be recycled to get some pretty valuable items. Depending on what you intend to craft or sell, some junk might even beat out crab pot fish for overall value. The sad part is, even without the junk items, the other fishing professions like fisher and angler can actually beat out mariner for crab pot fish profits, as well as carrying their benefits over to all other fish as well. If you want a more detailed breakdown on this, check out my video on crab pots. The bottom line is, this crab pot focused profession isn't even the best profession for crab pots. If you never fish normally, but still want to use crab pots while avoiding recycling, I guess mariner can work. Otherwise, it's bad enough to put in the D tier. Lure Master. Lure Master will make it so crab pots will no longer require bait. This saves you a whopping 5 gold per crab pot per day and makes it so you don't have to carry around any bait. Unfortunately, it counts as using the cheapest standard bait, so you won't be getting better quality fish or better assortment of fish that you could with deluxe or targeted baits. If this were part of another profession that boosted crab pots, I think that would make sense, but the fact that this is on its own as a level 10 profession makes it painfully bad. Is there a tier worse than F? No? Fine, it gets an F. Maybe we'll have something more positive as we look at the combat skill. Fighter. At level 5, Fighter will be the first option for professions, and it will give all attacks an increase of 10% damage, and it will boost your maximum hit points by 15. Both of these are nice consistent bonuses that help your ability to take out enemies faster and survive better. There's nothing bad I can say about this, and it's always a really good choice. I give Fighter a B. Brute. At level 10, Brute will be your first option in the Fighter path. This increases damage by 15% and it stacks with Fighter. Like Fighter, this is just another consistent bonus to damage. It trades the 15 extra hit points for another 5% attack, which is probably even better. This is an easy choice if you've gone with Fighter and want to get another similar boost. This one also gets a B. Defender. Defender increases health by 25. This route goes all in on survivability in contrast to the raw damage of Brute. Unfortunately, in Stardew Valley combat, oftentimes the best defense is a strong offense. This is especially true in a game where time is money. You don't want to spend extra time in combat if you don't have to. I'd much rather kill an enemy faster than be able to fight it for longer. Having more hit points is never a bad thing, but with the way defense works in this game, even if you stack it up, 25 hit points probably won't drastically change the number of hits you can take against the strongest enemies. On top of that, it's so easy to restore health with food, you can really eat your way out of a lot of situations. Compared to the alternative, I wouldn't suggest this one. The opportunity cost on this choice puts it in the C tier for me. Scout. The Scout profession increases critical strike chance by 50%. This sounds pretty good. The problem is, the base chance for a critical hit is pretty low, with the Galaxy Sword sitting at 2%. This can be boosted by foraging with aquamarines, using aquamarine rings, and even luck too. You can actually get the crit chance pretty high if you go all out, but it will cost you all of your weapon enchantment slots and ring slots, which can be a lot to give up. The biggest factor for increasing crit chance will be coming from the weapon enchantments, which are going to be unlocked pretty late in your combat career, only after reaching the forge at the Ginger Island volcano. Until then, Scout is going to be pretty lackluster. Even with higher crit chance, the crit damage multiplier is boosted with different enchantments and rings, so you'll have to make trade-offs there too. It can be cool to see big damage numbers, but there's something to be said about consistency. Knowing a serpent will almost always die in 3 hits is kind of nice compared to wondering whether it will take 1 hit or 5 hits each time. There's potential, but the inconsistency and required investment to make it viable puts this in the C tier for me. Acrobat. Acrobat will lower the cooldown on special moves by half. The main special move that a lot of us will care about is the slam attack of clubs and hammers. This special attack is super powerful because you can actually get a bunch of normal hits in during the area of effect slam animation. A lot of damage can be front-loaded this way every time the cooldown is up, and it can trivialize a lot of fights, including bigger groups of enemies. This can stack with the Artful Weapon enchantment, reducing the cooldown by another 50%. If you have a good hammer with the Artful enchantment, this can definitely be worth going down the Scout route, even if the slam attack can't crit. This has big potential to turn you into a hammer slamming machine and make a lot of combat really easy. There aren't a lot of dagger fans out there, but I think the dagger special attack is worth noting as well. This will lock the enemy in place while you stab them multiple times. This may synergize better with Scout than a Club 2, but it's a bit harder to land. For specific enemies, this could be worth it for big single target spike damage. For all of that, this is another combat profession that gets an A from me. Desperado. Desperado doubles critical hit damage. It synergizes well with Scout, so that's a good start. If you're going hardcore into critical hit and critical damage, then this can be pretty good. It's kind of all or nothing with stacking up critical hit chance, much like Scout, so there really isn't much to add. For that reason, it fits in right next to Scout in the C tier. Well, there you have it. If I had to make my picks for each profession, I would probably go tiller and artisan for farming. For mining, I might start with miner until I have the basic iridium needs covered and then go geologist and gemologist. I would for sure take gatherer and botanist for foraging, and then fisher and angler for fishing, and fighter and brute for combat. Of course, if you're looking for some variety and min-maxing your money isn't the be-all end-all, then I would probably swap over to rancher and shepherd for new take on farming, maybe pirate for a little more fishing randomness, and probably scout and acrobat for some more dynamic combat. In the end, it's about what you're having the most fun with. It's been quite the list, and as I mentioned, it's quite subjective depending on how you play, so I would love to hear what you guys think. Which ones are your favorites, and are there any that you think should be ranked higher? Let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree with any of the rankings, and if there's anything I missed that makes any of these professions really good. If you made it to the end, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video or learned anything new, please give it a like and subscribe, or come say hello to me on Twitch. Until next time, goodbye!